Recently I tagged a buck. We'd called Righty for a couple of years, and it was a great hunt. You can watch that. There'll be a link in the description. We called him Righty because you can see it comes off way different. The right side's way different than the left side. So took the head to our good buddy Pete Dickenson, taxidermist I've used for like 20 plus years. And I was really interested when Pete called. He had the head cleaned about his observations, because Pete has mounted over 1,000 deer in his career. He's seen a lot of skulls. So I wanted to share with you what Pete had to say. How many deer do you think you've mounted in your career?
Oh gosh, I have no idea.
Thousands?
Yeah, probably 1,000.
Probably 1,000.
There were several years of 100 each year, maybe over.
Yeah. All right. Have you ever seen this before?
No, never have. And to have lived over it, it just amazes me.
Because we had video of him last year.
Yeah.
And seen him, video him. He wasn't a real old deer. I'll get the job on in a second. I was surprised he lived last year, and I could feel this under the hide, but you've done a great job as always cleaning it all up. But I just shocked he was alive.
But what amazes me is this looks like it should have laid right there.
Yeah.
And then it's growed bone in between.
Yeah. And here's the original pedestal right there that would have matched this right here. Just a little residual.
Yeah.
But it got pushed away. I mean, it's at least, I'm saying 1.5 inches over from where it should have been.
Well, on most deer, on an average, most deer, I can prove this to you, but you can lay, I can lay 3 fingers in there like that.
All right.
And that's about how wide they are between their horns. Now, there is a little bit of exception.
And I can get 2 fingers on the side of your fingers there.
See? Yeah.
Grab you another rack over there.
I've got another one hanging right here that I cleaned up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
See? And we could look at several.
No.
And then do the same thing.
And then hold that a second. So there's my 3 fingers. Get this now out of the way. There are my 3 fingers there.
Yeah.
Right there. Now hold that one up.
Yeah.
And there are my 3 fingers full up.
Yeah. See, it's just.
And I mean, that baby is busted.
Yeah, it's cracked way down in there.
He come up out of a bed there we made, felt a bunch of cedars, burned, native grass and stuff. And he come out, we heard him grunting, and he come up from behind us pushing a doe.
It is. When I wasn't sure what I would find. I knew I could feel this, or I feel this in there when I was skinning it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how that would come out when you started boiling it to clean it.
Yeah.
I was afraid that I was afraid it'd fall apart.
Yeah.
I really wondered if this would just fall off.
Yeah.
But it's solid.
That's what got him tagged. That's that's a trophy to me, because that's an interesting deer.
It is. It's really, really interesting. I mean, there'd be a lot of people. It just shocks me. And I've seen a lot of deer. I've seen a lot of skulls.
Yeah.
But and I'd be real honest with you, because I think I'm like you. I think part of this pedestal is right there.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that he didn't run a point.
Yeah, well, it had a little nub for you skin it all up. Had a little nub there.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
But, and if as he got older, he might have grown another.
Might have. Might have. He probably, knowing what I know now, he might have survived, but this, there's a pretty big hole right there. A little bacteria gets in there and starts growing. That's a brain abscess. They don't survive that real long.
Yeah.
But,
well, you had one, what was it, 2 years ago, that we examined, and it had abscessed here. Last year, I skinned a deer, and the same thing. It had an abscess there, and there was infection around his horn.
Yeah.
Kid had harvested it, but when I got into the brain, cut in there for the skull mount. Yeah. There was infection inside against the brain as big as the end of my thumb.
Yeah, he wasn't.
He wasn't going to make it.
He was dead deer walking.
Yeah, that's what he was.
Yeah.
But it had ate through this piece of the skull right there.
Yeah, so a lot of bacteria make an acid as a byproduct, which eats calcium, right? You use a mild acid to clean with, real mild.
Yeah.
And so they just eat it up. But yeah, that's and this is cool. Look, hold it right there. You can tell how it comes down and goes over, and just a little velvet.
Yeah, it's a little velvet.
Tough to rub when you're like that. What a normal shape.
No, it wasn't.
But that's a good angle there. You can see instead of coming up like this, it's just been bushed over and then grows out like a tree growing out of an Ozark Bluff and then comes up the other side there.
Now, one other time I had a deer come in.
Yep.
And to be mounted. And it had a horn that laid out like this.
Yeah.
But it did not have this. It had actually pushed this pedestal. I assume they do it maybe when they're fawns.
Might have had an injury early on.
I mean, that's real soft.
Yeah, real pliable.
Yeah. And it had pushed that over there like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But that particular deer, and I remember it distinctively, I tried to lay my fingers in there. It was wider, but it was about that wide.
Gotcha.
See, it laid it over.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I wonder if maybe he done something when he was a fawn, and that skull was real soft. I don't know.
It's you can tell how it tried to grow back over and heal itself. You got a little like icicles hanging down there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you did great as always, Pete.
Right.
I need these kind of injured, blind, and one-eyed bucks to kill one anyway, so that helped me out a little bit. He'd probably a little Lulu in the head, so that probably helped me out a little bit.
I don't know. But, I mean, there was something else that I noticed. See, it's all cracked in there.
Yeah.
It should look like that.
Yeah. Clean. Mm-hmm. And this one's really cracked up.
Mm-hmm. I really figured whenever I got in there and it started boiling that this would literally all come apart right through there, plumb around that like that, and just pull off.
Yeah,
I didn't have no idea that he'd growed. I guess this bone had growed back over to kind of attach itself to it.
Your theory of it happening when it was young is probably good because those bones are, just like a infant youth, human youth.
Yeah.
They fall down, the head gets a little mushed sideways, not trying to be mean.
Yeah.
Mama starts screaming.
Yeah.
Rub that baby's head a little bit, kind of smooth it around. Yeah.
I mean, that's always been my theory on when they get this knocked over.
Yeah. Because an adult deer, where this was calcified really well, it had just broke open.
Yeah, it would broke open.
I agree with your theory, Pete. Of course, you've seen way more than I have. But.
Well, I remember seeing a pen-raised deer one time, and he had a horn broke down. They tranquilized him.
Yeah.
And they took that horn out, and it actually pulled part of this. Now it had actually just kind of broke this off, but it pulled some of that. I thought the deer would die.
Yeah.
He didn't. He growed an antler the next year. Of course, it was always screwed up.
Yeah.
It was always going to be screwed up, but he growed because a little bit of this pedestal was left, but they pulled part of it out.
I don't remember all this data back in our school, so that's 3+ decades ago, but researchers pulled a little pedestal cell tissue off a deer, put it on their hip, and it grew an antler on their hip.
Okay.
So you could surgically take these cells, which God made to grow antlers, and put them somewhere else and make them grow on that same species. Someone asked me today, well, could you put it on a human? I don't think you'd really want to do that, but we'd reject it. It'd be like an infection to us.
I think the body would reject it.
Yeah. Well, you did great, Pete, and I really appreciate taking time to clean it up and to be on the video here. Really appreciate it. For you folks home don't know, Pete hates cameras. He's not liking this at all.
Growing Deer is brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. Also by Green Cover Food Plots, Winchester, PH Outdoors, Moultrie Mobile, Steel, Fleet Outdoor Apparel, Morel Targets, Fourth Arrow, Soil Pro Outdoors, Scorpion Venom Archery, Case IH Tractors, Burris Optics, G5 Broadheads, Prime Bows, and Redneck Hunting Blinds.
I was really interested in what Pete said. We knew because on the hide there was a little residual of the pedestal or the base of the antler right here, but I had no idea this big crack was going to be all the way down through here. I mean, this skull is obviously fractured big time, And you could see, as Pete pointed out, the lines where the bone had regrown, but a massive crack. And when Pete got it all cleaned up, I could feel the ridge, but Pete pointed out all the damage on the backside. I don't know how this deer survived. I call it the Marcus Luttrell buck. Marcus Luttrell was a great Navy SEAL that went through unimaginable wounds and injuries and survived. I don't know how he survived. Loved reading that book. And how this deer survived, and I think it's very similar. Some humans, like Marcus, they don't know death, right? They just keep on going. And deer don't know death. There's no way they could have ever learned death. So they just know they're gonna survive. They just keep going. It's not some magical, oh, they're gonna rub mud on themselves to take bacteria out or something like that. They just keep going. I think there's a real lesson there for humans. When we get down and out, we gotta stay positive and keep going, physically, mentally. But this buck's wounds are just incredible. And for Pete, a guy who's had over 1,000 buck skulls cleaned up like this in his hand, really looking at details so he can do a great job in his taxidermy, to say this is the worst he's ever seen and he can't believe this deer survived is pretty telling to the significance of this massive wound. Shared this when I harvest deer, but the velvet on here and on here, this deer clearly knew, and you can see it in our Moultrie videos, the way he walked, he clearly was different. And I imagine this just asymmetry in weight, not just a non-typical point or two sticking off, just in weight, because this antler is much bigger than this one. And when I hold it, I mean, it clearly is really tippy, just why I didn't rub all the velvet off there. But there's a lot more to it, how this survived and grew. But when you're shed hunting this fall, and you're probably, if you're a big-time shed hunter, you're going to find some antlers that have a little bit more to skull bone attached. Well, that's not a good thing, because that needs to stay here. The pedestal or the basis needs to stay with the deer. There's actually one layer of cells right here. And when this is, flying at 30,000 feet, when the testosterone level drops below a certain threshold, that one layer of cells lets go. To me, that's the best super glue in the world, because you think about a 200-pound buck or whatever, fighting and pushing, and all the leverage out here pushing, and one layer of cells, microscopically thin cells, holding this antler on. And then when that testosterone drops, literally within a few hours or less in some cases, the antler just falls off. You couldn't push it off with two big deer pushing against each other and all the leverage, and then it just falls off. That's a true miracle. Only a creator could make that happen. But when you're finding sheds, you want to find those clean drops and the right amount of stuff on the bottom, and not a big jagged bone sticking off. We've had some deer here at the proving ground in the past that obviously had a brain abscess. We could see them in the field or when we were looking at the antler, and that's when a hole happens here enough and bacteria start growing in there, and they produce a little bit of an acidic waste, and that can eat the calcium out of the skull. And that bacteria grows and grows and actually puts pressure inside the brain cap on the brain. And when you start pushing on one side of the brain, deer are going to do something odd and eventually probably die. So this deer had a massive crack, several inches long, and somehow did not get bacteria, which tells me the skin was not busted. Usually when deer have that brain abscess, what could happen is they're in a fight and an antler tine gets through and pokes a hole in the skin. That skin serves a lot of purposes, but one is to keep bacteria from getting in. And antlers are dirty. They're rubbing in dirt, they're down eating, getting dirt and stuff. And when they get a hole through the skin, that's like an injection of bacteria below that protective layer. So Righty had survived a huge amount. Looks like it was healing well. It's also interesting, and I noticed this more after Pete pointed out, that this eye is not really lined up with this eye. It impacted this whole side of his skull, but he was a survivor. And in fact, when you saw the video, he was pushing a doe up through the timber when I saw Righty coming. I had a great professor at the University of Georgia that would talk about the cost of reproduction on males in the wild, especially with deer. And you think about a buck participating in the rut for months, and it's going to peak out over a week or two period of time, but they're actually pre-rut and building up and chasing fawns in the late season. Cost of reproduction. I've often shared that deer in research facilities, bucks, 3 bucks, all the food they can eat in a 1 acre facility, will lose about 30% of their body weight. That takes a 200-pound deer to a 140-pound deer post-rut. Cost of the rut is really high on bucks. That's one reason you want a balanced adult sex ratio, be sure you're harvesting plenty of does. You don't want a whole bunch of does per buck because that cost of reproduction, the stress of the rut, is even higher. That's a great reason. If you want big bucks, harvest more does. Those bucks get so low in health, in their health status, body condition, that you want to have really good quality habitat so those bucks can recover rapidly after the stress of the rut. I probably have erred throughout my career in talking a bit too much about the stress, nutritional stress of the rut. You know, they're walking more, they're not eating as much, how much weight they lose. There's a lot of physical stress. You think about two prize fighters and how beat up they get after the fight. Bucks are gonna fight, they're getting jabbed, they're chasing fast, they're tripping, they're, you know, breaking parts of their legs, whatever. We had a friend in West Virginia send us a great video last year of a buck that responded to him and went by his stand. If I remember right, I think he'd used a grunt call. And this buck, probably like when Righty broke this side of his skull, but this buck he saw, the antlers actually flopping. You can clearly see it flopping in the video. And I don't know if Righty was like that and eventually healed. I don't think so, because there's so much flop in that deer. It's a big gap. And that buck, I believe, had to die. He passed on for those injuries. There's more than a ½ inch gap here where that was broken and has regrown, but somehow there was enough structure to hold it where it wasn't flopping. This antler, the way that the antler wasn't flopping when he walked, we never noticed that in the Moultrie videos. And the buck we show you in this video from West Virginia, I can't imagine that buck survived that injury. And that's just a reminder of how rigorous the rut is on the physical condition of bucks. I'll take that one step further. And this may vary a little bit whether you're in a CWD zone or not, but if you've got a really good age structure of bucks, you've got a bunch, you know, 4 or 5-year-old bucks out there, some of them, they're so dominant, the pheromone in the area, rubs and scrapes, the pheromone may suppress some of the rutting behavior of immature bucks. And a lot of scientists, myself included, believe that's a way to prevent some of these injuries. Just like, you know, you walk into your class reunion or wherever, you know, and there's a great big guy, you're not too mouthy because that one big guy, if he's well behaved, is keeping everyone in line. And if you've got some dominant bucks out there, it keeps all your 2- and 3-year-olds from fighting all the time. There's research that certainly indicates that's the case. One last thing I want to bring up, you know, a lot of people have just seen that deer, and I'll hold it this way, you can see how drastic that's coming off that side. But, oh, that's a cold buck, I'm going to shoot him. That's a genetically inferior deer. This was clearly a physical injury. It was not a genetic disability. And I think a lot of bucks are shot across America because people make an excuse, that's genetics, it's a spike, and he's got bad genes. Well, really that was from a fawn, and fawns aren't mature enough and don't produce enough milk, a lot of reasons, usually bred late, so the fawn was born late, and therefore their offspring is a spike. Whitetails are built to survive, and if you give them half a chance and decent habitat, they will look great and do great. But there's a lot of talk out there about bad genes, and that's almost never the case. It's almost always a habitat or a herd management or the combination of both things that cause deer not to express their full potential. Sometimes you got to peel back the layers to get to the truth. You know, that when Pete got Righty cleaned up and we could see all the physical damage, we knew exactly, or felt strongly we knew what had happened to Righty. That's kind of true with our lives. And the best way to peel back the truth is to seek the Creator intentionally, read His Word daily, and apply those lessons to our lives. Thanks for watching Growing Deer.